Hey, dear friends. First, I want to take a moment to just honor you for reaching out to find a helpful resource such as this. I know it can be difficult, especially with this video and it being about that free state. Oftentimes, it is really challenging to try to find resources to help yourself when you're going through that. So, I want you to know that I see you and I can appreciate the difficulty that can arise when you're trying to help yourself to feel better, especially when you're in that nervous system state. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jena. I'm a somatic reset therapist, and I enjoy this work because of how much it has changed my life. When I learned about somatic therapy, that was the missing piece of the puzzle for me to better understand why the holistic practices that I did actually changed so much of my life. And so here I am offering these services to more people because I think everyone needs to better understand just how amazing this work is at helping. So let's talk about the ickiness that is the freeze state or the shutdown state, because if you've experienced it, then you know, like that's a tough one. And I want to just say, like, everyone has that in their nervous system state, right? It's you're not just getting it because there's something wrong with you. You're not stuck in that because there's something wrong with you. Like, this is a response that everyone's nervous system is coded with. And it just depends on when it shows up for you. And so the biggest thing that I want to recognize and hold space for is that recognition that oftentimes when we enter into a freeze state, it's because we have been in a state of too much for too long. And it's like the nervous system just kind of bottoms out. And when it bottoms out and it goes into that freeze or that shutdown, that immobilization state, what we notice is it's like that we need that deep rest, right? We feel exhausted, we're drained, we're fatigued, we don't want to get up. We want to just curl up with our favorite blanket and stay in bed. And we're like, just leave me alone for like a week, right? That's a really good sign that you're in a freeze state. Um, but our nervous system isn't bad. It's doing its job of keeping us alive. Sometimes it's just we don't like being stuck in that state when we don't need to be in there. Like the situation is over, right? And we're ready to move on, but our nervous system is like, no, we're gonna hang out here a little more. And you're like, no, I don't want to, right? And so it creates this inner battle, this inner conflict, because there's the you that's tired of feeling that way, that is recognizing like that is not you, it's not how you want to be. And yet there is the physical and physiological components to it that make it so hard to just get better, right? Because if that was easy, we wouldn't have these therapy practices. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you some symptoms of freeze and shutdown, and even the mixed states. So I think functional freeze, it's super important for people to know and understand what functional freeze is, because I see a lot of people in my practice that are going through life in that functional freeze state, and they don't realize that that is what they're experiencing. I'm also going to explain why relaxation-based regulation practices don't work when we're talking about the freeze state. And it can actually make you feel worse. I see a lot of stuff being promoted out there that is simply, if it's relaxation, it's regulation, and that's just not correct. And we're going to get into why that is. And this is based on applied polyvagal theory. It's part of what I do in my practice as a body worker, as a coach. This is what I work with to help people break out of these patterns that they're stuck in and to better understand how to navigate those nervous system states within. So if you're in that freeze state, and the freeze is that immobilization, it's the shutdown, it's the, let me curl up into a ball and cocoon myself. If we were talking about animals, I would love to use a possum as as the mascot for the freeze state, right? When you think about how possums behave and they feel threatened, they play dead, right? That's the ultimate freeze response. And our lovely friends, the possums, show us that. They will absolutely fall over and play dead. And that saves them from their predators. Now, there's other steps to that process that's kind of gross. I did a little time in wildlife rehab, so I know how possums behave and what their responses are. They do other things that help to encourage their threat to think that they're dead and decomposed, and we're not going to get into that. But it's a good representation of what the free state is like, because that's essentially what it is for us as humans too. It's when our nervous system decides that we have had too much, too long, and it is done. And in that doneness, it just bottoms out, shuts down, and says, that's enough. I'm going to force you into rest. Like, it's like I said, wanting to wrap up in your favorite blanket and stay in bed and just cocoon yourself and not do anything. Like you don't want to do anything. You lose that joy, that pleasure in life. Like you don't even want to do the things that you like to do. And here's where functional freeze comes in, because functional freeze will sneak in there and you'll be doing the things that are necessary throughout the day, right? You'll get up and get your shower, you'll feed yourself, you'll go to work, you'll do what you got to do around the house, you'll pack the kids' lunches and take them to school, right? You'll do all of the things that require you to function throughout the day. But that's all you do because you don't have any more anything within yourself to give to do anything else. There is that sense of depression that is there. And that's really that state of mind that occurs when you're in the shutdown state, because there is that loss of joy. There is that loss of pleasure, of passion, right? It disappears. There's no space for that because what your nervous system has decided is that because it's been too overwhelmed and went into that too much, too quick, and it can't handle it anymore, it decided that any of those feelings is also too much. And it just is trying to protect you by bringing you into this deep hole and saying, just lay down and rest. Now, for a few moments, that might feel good, right? I think of Savasana at the end of a yoga class when you finally get to take that corpse pose and you get to breathe and rest and allow the body to just be. But the thing with the freeze state is when you're in that shutdown, it doesn't feel good. And most of the time, you don't want to be there. It's this inner resistance and frustration and anger and all of these things that start to rise up because you're feeling one way, but your mind wants to feel another. And it's this inner tug of war that begins to happen. And then you'll have people that promote relaxation as regulation. And if you're doing these relaxation and mindfulness-based practices that are all about the relaxation response in the nervous system, what happens is it takes you further into shutdown. And that's what so many people don't realize. When you're in shutdown, you don't want those practices. Those practices tell your nervous system to shut down more. It is sending it more signals of, yeah, let's go deeper into the shutdown. Let's go deeper into the freeze. Let's stay and hang out here. And so what happens is you'll do these practices that you think are of benefit, and really it takes you further into that dark hole. This is where applied polyvagal theory comes in, and the understanding of the nervous system states, and the understanding that this is a bidirectional communication. This is a two-way street that's going on in the vagus nerve and how our body is responding to stress and how the nervous system decides how to respond. So I want you to think about it like here's that shutdown state. It's down here, right? And anything below this threshold is shut down. And then from this point to this point is your window of capacity. This is your resiliency. This is where life sends you the ups and downs and you flow between these states and you're just fine. You're handling things good. You're able to come back to center and regulate. And this is your normal window of tolerance. And then anything above this threshold comes into overwhelm, it comes into activation, it comes into fight or flight, right? This is where we see the overwhelm, the burnout before you drop into shutdown. This is where we see that anxiety, the anxiousness, right? The jittery, the excess, the too muchness, right? That's all in that activation state. So now we have shutdown, the shutdown freeze state, we have this regulated state, and then we have the activation state, okay? Now, if we're activated, we want to relax to come back down here. But if we're down here, relaxing sends us further down. We need activation to come up to regulation. And this is the piece that so many people get wrong in trying to navigate their nervous system and find that nervous system reset that they're looking for. And this is why it's so important to find someone that's educated, that knows, that understands, and that works with this in a way that actually produces results, right? Because just doing some deep breathing, just practicing meditation, just doing these relaxation-based practices is not enough for the entire nervous system. It's not what every nervous system state needs. And so if you're in that shutdown, you need to be doing activating practices. You need to have movement, right? And so this looks like breath work that might be shorter, faster, that brings you to that activated state. So think about when you're doing a workout, how you get out of breath and your breathing becomes faster, right? That is because you're doing activating breath. It's matching the state that your body is in. So our breathing practices to regulate from this state of freeze or shutdown, it looks a lot different than the breathing practices we do to regulate from an activated state, right? So this breathing practice might be shorter, quicker, faster paced breathing to help activate the system. This might be in yoga, like the fire breathing, right? That quick breath work that we do with the belly. This might look like just doing some simple, right? So we get that faster paced breathing to really energize the system. That energizing the system is the activation. This also is movement, physical movement, moving the body in a way that gets the heart rate going, right? It's got to be more than just strolling along. You've got to get the heart rate up. We want to change that heart rate variability because right now that heart rate variability is part of what's keeping you stuck in the freeze state. So if we can change the heart rate variability, which changes with that faster paced breath, it also changes with movement, with exercise, with, maybe walking in a brisk, faster paced walk, or maybe just jogging up and down your steps a few times. Maybe it's a more vigorous yoga practice. Maybe it's going for a bike ride, right? Something that gets the body moving and the heart pumping and activated, right? This creates that activated internal state. And from that activated state is how you come back to regulation when you are in a freeze response. Now, the tricky freeze response is going to be that functional freeze. Because when you experience functional freeze, it means that you are flowing from one extreme to the other. It's like you easily might drop down into that shutdown mode. But you also get up and you do the things you got to do for the day. You might come into somewhat of an activated state, but it's probably not enough to pull you into regulation. It's like just barely scratching the surface. You're doing the bare minimum, right? And it's probably taking all your spoons for the day just to do what you got to do to get through the day. And this is where that knowing that if I could make myself just do this one thing, it might help me feel better and find that resource of untapped energy reserves that I know are inside because I know I'm not normally this shut down. I know I have more energy than this, right? So this is where we come back to the practice of, okay, I still have to find that activation. If you find that you're kind of flowing between shutdown and being too activated, like you go right into feeling overwhelmed by the things that you're doing, which I touched on, because if it's taking all your spoons, you're going into overwhelm and you're dropping right back down into shutdown, right? And so you're kind of going between these extremes where it's like, okay, I'm getting the stuff done that I need to do, and now I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do anything else, and boom, shut down. And then you stay in shutdown and then you're like, oh, I've got to get this done. And so you muster up all of that you can to get the next thing done. And it uses up all the spoons for the moment. And your body is like, yeah, we're done. And you drop back down and shut down. So that state is a lot more difficult to move out of. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are living in this functional freeze cycle. And it takes a little work. It takes a little more work of cultivating safety and regulation within yourself. And this is where building a practice for yourself can be so beneficial. This is where combining different things together helps to find what is working for you to help you the most. And navigating where you're at in your nervous system in the moment. If you have the tools and resources to help you as you're coming into overwhelm, trying to get through the things you need to get done for the day so that you have more capacity of getting those things done, while also having regulation practices when you drop back into that shutdown so that you can activate yourself enough to feel a little better to keep going. And then comes the supportive practices that you continue to do that are simple, not easy, right? All the practices are simple. They are so simple, but it's not easy because it's not easy to make yourself do the things, right? If it was, you wouldn't be struggling. And let's face it, we all struggle when we experience these nervous system states because if it wasn't a struggle, we wouldn't be stuck. And look, I do this work for a living. And there are still times when I get into one of these states and it's like, yeah, I've been slacking on my self practices and this is where I'm at now. So how can I bring myself back? And then having to have enough willpower to do the things that you know are going to be of benefit, even when it's hard. That's not easy. So the practices might be simple, but actually making yourself do the practices, it's not easy. And I know that because I do these practices myself. As a domestic violence survivor, that pattern of functional freeze is one that is really strong in my nervous system response patterns. And I know this. And so I'm really sensitive to those that also go through that pattern because I know, one, it can be so sneaky and tricky, right? You don't even realize that you're in the pattern because you're still just going through life. Then all of a sudden you begin to realize, like, oh, I'm feeling crappy. Like I'm not even enjoying the things that I usually enjoy. You start feeling that depression kind of creep in because you keep dropping into that shutdown state and there's no joy, there's no pleasure happening. There's no, doing your favorite hobbies and doing the things you want to do because you're using everything that you have within yourself to just get through the next thing that you have to do that day. And then when you come into that realization that that's what's going on, it's like, oh, okay. Now I know what this is, right? And this is why it's so important to understand and to get an idea of what these states are like and to understand the cycles of them. So we don't want to just do relaxation practices because that takes you further into shutdown. We want activating practices. We want to dance like no one is watching, right? That's one of my favorite ones to do. Put on some of your favorite dance music and move your body. That movement, that gets the heart rate going, that helps you to shift out of that freeze state, but you've got to pull yourself up to do it. And that is not easy. None of the nervous system patterns are easy to deal with. The practices are simple, but the work is not easy. But you are so worth it. You are worth the effort it takes to do the practices to help yourself, to gain the benefits of learning the practices and using the resources you have to help yourself so that you're not stuck in the cycle for longer. So if you're experiencing freeze, if you're experiencing functional freeze, if you learned something about those states from this video, I want to hear about it. What did you get from this? What did you better understand about yourself in this state from listening? Were there little moments that clicked for you that was like, oh, yeah, I get that. And what have you learned about what you need to do to move out of that state? Right? We talked about quicker breath. We've talked about movement, move the body, get the heart rate up, exercise, get the heart rate up, dance like nobody is watching, right? Do the things that activate the system so that you have a chance at regulating the system again. You have a chance of coming back to center. And if you're experiencing functional freeze, recognizing that you've got to sit with yourself in the moment and recognize the state you're in the moment and work with that state. If you are currently in that activated, overwhelmed, anxious state, that fight or flight state, then you need to work with those calming practices to regulate. And if you are in that current shutdown state, that bottom out state, you need to activate through movement, through something that quickens the heart rate, that changes that heart rate variability so that you can come back to regulation. So I'd like to know what practice you think you will do to help yourself in the moment when you are experiencing freeze. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Namaste.